Introduce Todd though. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. We are live Friday night, as we always are. We have Pete and Miss Beautiful Lynda with us, and my name is Cathryn. Welcome to the I Want to Believe show, where we bring on different experts and consultants and you name it from the paranormal world. So here we are. I just want to address the people that are watching on my channel, Oracle Intuitions, because this is a Friday show that I do on the I Want to Believe channel. And I decided I'm going to stream it to my channel for this week. I wanted to, just kind of give you guys a preview and so you guys can come on and join the I Want to Believe channel as well. Subscribe, because we have amazing guests that come on every Friday. So I just didn't want everybody to get kind of confused. I still have my regular shows. But we are not doing readings tonight, so please do not ask for readings. This is not the reading show. This is our Friday show on the I Want to Believe channel. So, yeah.
I can give a few readings if you want.
Yeah, you can do that, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'll set the tone with my green background.
You need to have a crystal ball or something, though.
Yeah.
Your green background, that's pretty psychedelic right there.
I know. It's it reminds me of the years of when I used to do acid. I don't have to do it. Oh, did I say that? Oh,
you're allowed to say that. It's
okay,
YouTube. Okay. You're good.
Oh my gosh, it's too funny.
So, how are you guys? How's everything?
Good. Still fighting with the fires here. Same old. There's a lot of it's gradually getting closer and closer all around Kamloops. The interior at the moment of BC is there's quite a lot of fires that's causing quite a significant amount of damage. Fortunately, there's only been a couple of deaths, which is unfortunate for them. But there's been a lot of emphasis in my field of relocating hospitals and stuff like that. So this week's been crazy busy in that regard, and it's definitely been an eye opener as well in regard to where we live here and what we take for granted as what we call paradise here as well. So, but anyway. Right. Besides that, it's good. The heat's died down, so we don't have 52 degrees anymore. And it's been good. It's been a good week. Besides that,
good.
How about you, Lynda?
Well, it's been hot and very humid around here. And yesterday there was a tornado in Barrie, Ontario, and that's not far from where I live. So our skies were kind of witchy, and we were told that there was a tornado warning. So everybody was in the basement and I was driving. So,
Well, there's that, right?
There's that.
And I was driving. That. Yeah, there's that. Okay. Away from the tornado or to the tornado?
No, kind of to the tornado. But that's okay. It's amazing what we do for our kids. I was driving her home from work. It's all good.
What's one of those things that you don't want to say? Just take the bus.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I know. I wish I could, but
yeah, I totally get it.
It's all good. I'm excited about the guest tonight, though.
Yes, I'll introduce the guest. So this week's guest is a seasoned Sasquatch researcher from Oregon. Sorry, I had to think then. Sorry, brain's gone dead. States. And let's bring him on the show. It's Todd Neiss, and let's all say hi to him.
Hello, Todd.
Hey, Todd.
Hello, guys. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on to the show. We're honored to have you here.
Thanks for coming on such a short notice, and I appreciate your last minute.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
Thanks. So, So, how did you get started in this field? What kind of sparked your interest in getting in Bigfoot or Sasquatch?
Well, let me put it this way: I didn't want to believe. To be honest with you, my baptism, if you will, into Bigfooting was quite abrupt, but an epiphany just the same. It happened on April 3rd of 1993, and at that time I was a combat engineer with the Oregon Army National Guard. And for those of your listeners that may not know what combat engineers do, involves a lot of explosives, actually, whether it be mines or mine clearing, cratering charges. There's all kinds of different scenarios but mostly what we do is we work with explosives, and it's a lot of fun, actually. But so on this particular day, again, I mentioned April 3rd, 1993 was a Saturday. And we had gone up into this area, this timber holding, private timber holding area that we had special permission to go into. And throughout this vast property that they owned up in Clatsop County, in the very northwest corner of Oregon, on the Coast Range, actually, we were allowed to go in there, and we would do these very large explosions, much larger than what we could do on our base, without breaking every window in the place. And so we went up there. We had 3 sites. Each one had a different scenario. One was steel cutting, like you're going to blow up a bridge, for instance. The other was a surface mounted minefield that we had to blow a lane through. And the third and last site was a cratering charge, which was about 250 pounds of ammonium nitrate that we'd been soaking in diesel fuel for about 2 hours. And anyway, so we set the fuses on this last blast, and I don't have to tell you our SOP was to get the hell out of there. And we did. We got in our vehicles. There were 4 vehicles in all, 2 Humvees up front. The third vehicle was a covered, what we called a deuce and a half, troop transport. And then the commander's vehicle took up the rear. And so in this particular case, I wasn't driving. I was sitting behind the driver, in fact, and it was such a nice day that I had the window open and my arm hanging out, and I just glancing about the countryside, looking for wildlife, because this is an area that I had hunted for both deer and elk every year. And so it was just natural for me to be looking out there. And we came around this corner, and the trees dropped down to a level that we could see directly to the second rock quarry, where we had detonated a blast maybe an hour earlier. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking down at this quarry, and standing right out there in the open in this quarry are these 3 very dark figures. And I'm like thinking, that's not right. It's, when we're doing these obviously very serious, very safety-oriented activities, we have to have 100% accountability for everybody. And so we don't allow people to go out onesie, twosies, threesies, or whatever, right? Excuse me. But there these 3 figures are. And they're standing out in this almost like a cement gray backdrop, which the contrast between them being very, I would say black, or if not so, very dark brown, but I think they were black. I mean, but they were hair covered. There was no clothing to make out. They did not present the same profile that a human would. They were obviously watching us. They were 3 abreast, and the one in the middle was a full head taller than the two that flanked it on the right and left. But still, those two that flanked the bigger one were certainly not small by any means. I estimated the one in the middle to be about 9 feet tall, and the two on either side were at least 7, maybe 7.5 feet tall. But it was their profile, it was their silhouette that drew me to almost immediately recognize I'm not looking at people.
So what was the characteristics of them, apart obviously from the sheer height? What was the characteristics of them that that made you think that it wasn't a human being, like with their bodily shape, their outline?
Well, my first instinct was, what the hell are these people doing down there? Because frankly, where they were at, they were technically in range of being bombarded by this cratering charge, the shrapnel from the explosion. But yeah, what really made them stand out, other than what I was seeing, was the one in the middle. This taller one stood there like a statue. It didn't flinch. It didn't move whatsoever. But these two on its left and right were exhibiting this unusual behavior of they were rocking back and forth, left to right. They like shifting their weight from one foot to the other, and in the process, these long arms. And that's what really got me, Pete, was the fact that these arms extended well below their knees. But these two, either side of this larger one, kept doing this rocking back and forth action, and I could see these long pendulous arms again swinging well below their knees, and they did it the entire time I saw them. And it makes no sense that humans would be acting that way, but just the same, this wasn't a 3 to 5 second something ran across the road in front of my car kind of event. I watched them for a full 25 seconds. Now, wow. 25 seconds doesn't sound like much, but yeah. I would ask your audience to look at their watch for 25 seconds. They're going to be like, come on, but especially seeing what I was seeing, it was just fantastic. And then at the end of that, the conclusion of that viewing, we took a right turn, and we were not far from the staging area where we would get to and wait for the big boom, the explosion, and then we would get back in our vehicles and go up and check our work. And I instinctively, after what I saw, I can't even explain the shock it was to my senses. But I will say this: when we stopped, and we were again the second of 4 vehicles, I jumped out and jogged back up in the direction that we had just came from, in hopes of seeing him again. It's like for a moment you saw God, and then it's gone, and then you're like, oh my God, I gotta go see that. That was not long. I don't know. I just, something inside of me.
Did you even ask yourself, was that even real? Like what?
Yeah.
What's that?
But did you even ask yourself, was that even real?
No.
Hey, it was just
no, Cathryn, not at all. The thing is, I can't unsee what I saw.
Yeah.
And I can see it.
I'd be so in shock of what I just saw that I'd probably be like, was my mind being messed with me? What the heck, No,
again, I can't unsee what I saw, but yeah. I was, for me, and I didn't need any sort of confirmation of what I just, I watched them for nearly a half a minute.
Wow.
And they're doing this back and forth thing, and I'm like, oh my God. And so, but it gets a little more interesting after that. So we got down there to the staging area, and I went as far as I dared go back up the road that we just came down from. And I got to the point where I knew if I went any further, I would get in trouble because, again, that 100% integrity thing, everybody has to be accounted for, and nobody goes off on their own. It's just that, serious of training. So I went as far as I dared, and I'm standing on my tiptoes, and I got my hand up to my head. I'm trying to look over this damn berm, if you will, just a little rolling hill, but it was just enough to block my view of that rock quarry. But it was while I was standing there when it even got more interesting, because I heard somebody yell out my name. I heard somebody say, "Hey, Neiss." And I look to my right and I see Sergeant Martin coming up, Jeff Martin. He's walking toward me and he says, I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "What are you looking at?" I said, "Nothing," which technically was true. And he continued to come my direction. And then he got right up to where I was at. I remember he was smoking a cigarette. And he said, "I don't suppose you saw what I saw down at the second blast site." Oh my God, I think we lost Lynda.
Yeah, I think her Wi-Fi, she'll be back in probably a second.
Right. So anyway, I said, "I don't know, Jeff. What did you see?" I wasn't going to say it, like, whatever. And he said, "I saw 3 huge, hair-covered, I don't know." He said, "A Bigfoot, I believe." And at that, of course, I went, "Okay." I said, "I saw them too, right?" And so that was, again, April 3rd. And again, I was a traditional guardsman, so I'm training, doing our drills, if you will. Hello, Lynda.
Hi,
welcome back.
You're back.
Internet issues. Sorry, guys.
So anyway,
that was easy.
So anyway, it turned out the next drill, which would be in May, the first week of May, we had 2 more soldiers come forward and admit to seeing the same thing, independent of each other, by the way. So that's what makes, I hate to call it my sighting, because it was my sighting and 3 other people. But I mean, it makes it kind of unique, because multiple animal sightings are very rare. Normally they're seen, individually, and
Right.
Multiple eyewitnesses, independent of one another, is even more rare. But the very fact of the activity that we were involved in, we were blasting we're blowing up their world. We're setting up mushroom clouds, 2,500 feet in the air. We're creating miniature earthquakes, at least locally. And so, I don't know. It's just, I don't think I've heard of another example quite like that. But anyway, that's how I got involved. Just a long version. Sorry, I tried to make it the Reader's Digest version. But anyway, so that's how I got involved, and I've been looking for them ever since. It's been 28 plus years. And as soon as we get done with this broadcast, I'm going right back up there.
Get back at it.
That's right.
So when you first spotted the sighting, and obviously you went to you mentioned Sergeant, didn't you?
Staff Sergeant, yeah.
Yes, Sergeant. So how was that received in the military? As because there's a big focus in regard to like UFOs and stuff like that, and
right.
You hear in the States that things are kind of pushed under the doormat, that kind of thing. Obviously, you must have filled out some kind of report or something like that on your sighting.
Well, not officially, but that's a great question, Pete, because when, once I lost sight of these things and I just kind of collapsed back into my seat as we were driving, the thought came to me, I just saw something scientifically, historically, that is, you know, not just unbelievable, but important scientifically. And I'm like, what do I do with this? And like, I assume about 9 out of 10 people that have these experiences keep it to themselves. Mainly, I think, because of fear of their reputations, fear of people thinking that they're, you know, questioning their credibility or their sanity or whatever. And I kind of fell in that group myself, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? But over time, I decided that there must be a purpose. There must be a reason. You know, I just won the cryptozoological lottery that day, and I was like, why me? And so I put aside the fact that I was a non-commissioned officer in the military and a vice president of a shipping company and a family man with 3 children I was raising. I really had to kind of steel myself up for it, but I just said, no, this is more important than me. This is far more important than my reputation. And so to answer your question, I actually designed a poster, if you will, on my computer. She's back. Anyway,
cross your fingers, because I'm missing all of this, and it's terrible because honestly, Todd, I wanted to say, so did anybody but you see this? And now you never know.
You guys fill her in. You
Yeah, yeah.
Get the
I'll
replay.
get it in the replay.
Wait for the movie. No,
Yeah.
it's better than the book, actually. No, I've not done either. I'm just joshing you, but you know, no, yeah, there were actually 3 other eyewitnesses that had seen them. Yeah, but I was saying, answering Pete, I was like, so I kind of got a little gutsy, and designed a poster saying Bigfoot researcher, and I drew a very bad amateur drawing of a Bigfoot and put my phone number on it, and I tacked it up. There's like 4 bulletin boards in the armory at my my unit where I was drilling training from, and I tacked up 4 of them. Made sure nobody else was around. I'm like, and I went down the hall and I put them out, and suffice to say, they came down within the hour. But yeah, no, I share your concern, Pete. Is the, you know, am I get, you know, there is such a thing called a Section 8, you know, where they can say this dude is, you know, nuts, you know, mentally unstable, can't be in the guard anyway. But the funny thing is, over time, and I transferred a lot. I took a 9-year break, came back in the service full-time active duty for the last 15 years or so, just retired last year. And it seemed everywhere I went, everybody kind of, oh, here comes Sergeant Bigfoot, you know. But no, it's always been kind of a mixed response, you know. Nobody's been really crass to me and tried to, you know, rib me too much, but a lot of them have actually kind of come on board and said, "Wow, thank you for coming forward." So anyway, I dodged that bullet. I did my 20+ years, and I'm retired now. So,
did you ever get the opportunity to speak to your other colleagues about what they experienced as well?
Oh, absolutely. Sergeant Martin, there was and again, this is at a time I'm still debating whether I want to come forward publicly. And I was introduced to it's like Bigfoot Anonymous group, you know. It's like, hi, I'm Todd, and I'm a Bigfootaholic or whatever. I don't know. But, it was a group that literally met underground under this old used bookstore in St. John's, which is southeast Portland. And it was ran by a gentleman named Ray Crow, who's no longer with us. But I met a lot of people through that. It made a lot of connections and networked. And I met a gentleman by the name of, he was Wolf Henner Fehrenbach, but he went by Henner. German primatologist that actually lived and worked at the Northwest Regional Primate Center in Beaverton, which is kind of southwest of Portland. And he listened to what I have to say, and he discussed like this behavior I saw, this swaying thing, and he goes, "That's very typical with not only lesser primates but great apes. Is if they feel agitated, if they feel nervous for whatever reason, they will." He said, "Go to the zoo and like knock on the glass. Sometimes they'll start doing that rocking back and forth thing. But anyway." I'm sorry, getting back to your question.
No, that was the last question. So,
okay.
So you transitioned. Obviously, you came out the military, and then you obviously started your passion. How was that transition? Where did you go from now I'm going to go out and look for Bigfoot now? Did you just suddenly go, I'm going to just grab my bag and go out with a flashlight, or how did you research it before you went out, or didn't you?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, initially I can kind of consider myself a victim of this absolute stunning epiphany, like I said. But for the very first time, and you got to understand, I've grown up my entire life here in the Pacific Northwest, and you can't live around here without hearing stories, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, but I had personally categorized it in that of a campfire tale to kind of scare kids around the campfire. Don't go too far from the fire, boogeyman will get you, whatever, but so I didn't put a lot of credence into it. But after, and again, I didn't read any books on it. I didn't watch any TV programs on it, which now is pretty ironic. But when I got back to my, Monday through Friday job, I made a beeline for the library. And frankly, I had not been in a library for probably 15 years, but I had to get whatever information. I was starving for information about these things. So I checked out a stack of books, maybe, I think the maximum was 10 books. And I checked out all these books, not knowing that in the future I would end up meeting and becoming friends with most of those authors. But I just took I wanted the latest, newest information about these things. So it was kind of a personal thing for me, Pete. I was like, I'm going to do my own private research, and I'm not going to be public about it. I'm just going to, I had to. It wasn't even an option for me. It's just like, I have too many questions and not enough answers. And so I started, digesting all these books and whatnot. And it really wasn't until a year later in 1994 that I was asked by Peter Byrne. I'm not sure if you know who he is, but he's 95 years old, soon to turn 96. He's a Britisher. But Peter Byrne is really a pioneer in this field, has been looking for not only Bigfoot but Yeti in Nepal for over 60 years, and I consider him a very good friend. And he called me one day and says, "Hey, here's the thing. I've been asked to be on a show called Unsolved Mysteries, and I talked to the producers, and they'd like you to be on." Involved. Do you want to do that? And I'm thinking, this is the old series, by the way, back with Robert Stack. And at first, I'm like, oh wow, cool! I'll meet Robert Stack, and I've always watched that show. But it just wasn't Bigfoot per se, but a lot of mysterious stuff. And the next morning when I woke up, I almost changed my mind. I had to kind of put everything on a scale and go, you understand this is a huge leap from having a sighting, telling a few close friends, doing your own research, to now jumping out into the public realm. And I almost didn't go, and I thought, no, I promised Peter I would. And since then, I've done over 30 different TV shows, newscasts, documentaries, indie films, and whatnot, and spoke at many conferences. And I've kind of, I got comfortable with that, and my conscience is clear. Anybody wants to question me, feel free to. I don't lie, and this is too part of what when I decided to kind of come out of the Bigfoot closet, if you will, is that people that really knew me, they knew a person that wasn't prone to coming off the cuff with oh, I saw a ghost, or I saw a Bigfoot, or the Loch Ness Monster, or a UFO, or anything, so as far as anybody else is concerned, I couldn't care less. And so I have no regrets. And I ended up founding a nonprofit organization called the American Primate Conservancy back in 2015. And really our goal, our mission statement, if you will, is the discovery, research, knowledge, recognition, and protection of this species. What they are, I don't know for sure. I don't think anybody can say for sure. But back in the day when I first came out of the field and wanted to study all this latest, greatest, newest, up-to-date, Bigfoot information, I kind of did a 180 and looked for the oldest stuff. Because let's face it, us Westerners, if you will, have been on the West Coast here for 300 years at best. The Native Americans have lived here now, it's been estimated 19,000 years. So who do you think has more information about these things? And what's interesting is you find out that the Native Americans, First Nations people, whatever you want to call them, they discuss it at length, and of course, the tribes at the time were very well. There was a lot of real estate back then, so we're talking tribes were pretty well spread out, and so, but again, they had to have lived symbiotically with these creatures, this species, I'd rather say, than the 300 years that we've had to toy with the idea. And so what I find interesting is the Native Americans, the way they, it's really difficult to do research because they're literally prehistoric in the fact that they didn't have a written language for the most part. Everything was passed down from generation to generation, from elder to elder and what have you. And so, but I've found enough, and I've actually befriended a number of tribes, which is not easy. But you find when you read about how they dealt with this. They talk about the turtle, the snake, the coyote, the owl, the raven, in a very distinct way.
Mhm.
And in some cases they ascribe certain powers to them, whatever. But when it comes to these, and we're not just talking Bigfoot and Sasquatch, we're talking Dasanaquah, Bakwas, Istiyaha, Oma. You can go on and on. Satanga in Nebraska. Every tribe has a different name, but they're describing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And so I found that fascinating. But what really stuck out to me was he didn't talk about them as animals. They literally referred to them as another tribe, and not just any tribe. They called them alternately the old ones or the first ones. And again, describing them as an ancient tribe that have always been here in North America. And I kind of come full circle from thinking this was an offshoot of Gigantopithecus, which they found in Vietnam and China and Kazakhstan, that might have somehow survived a tromp across the Bering Strait, which over time I don't think that's correct. But Gigantopithecus, again for your listeners, they have fossils of a giant bipedal ape that was literally bigger than what we're dealing with here. And, I kind of bought into that whole Trans-Beringia Escape Act into the United States, or not United States, but North America. And I've really come full circle to believe that they've actually been here all along.
Right.
And it was only the introduction of Homo sapiens in the form of, native peoples that ended up coming over here that had to deal with them. But again, who has more information? Westerners with 300 years or 19,000 years? And so I just, anyway. So that's where I'm at now. I think what we're dealing with really is a population of relic hominids, not humans, but in the same kind of category as Neanderthal or Cro-Magnon or Denisovans, but an ancient people. And whatever the case, I think they probably were isolated for so long that when us little hairless people came in, they've just decided to remain elusive for their own safety, and it's probably not a bad idea.
Yeah. We have a question here. I'm just going to put it up on the screen so that we can all see it. Somebody is asking, Cliff is asking, how come it's not coming up? Hang on a second. Do you think that some people do that Bigfoot is alien in nature as an I think he meant extraterrestrial being? But that has been thrown around a few times. We have heard that. I actually think our guest last week brought that up as well.
Well, I get that a lot, actually, as I go around the country speaking to different groups. And I get it, but I don't. I mean, so for me, I don't know why, but this species, and let's try to keep it focused on that, this species somehow gets entangled with UFOs and ghosts and spirits and as you say, are they extraterrestrial? Are they transdimensional? And what we call that in the circles I travel around in the vernacular, we call it the woo. And it's not to be offensive, but it's like the woo woo,
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I'm not a scientist by any means, but I always try to look at this from a very biological standpoint. I mean, unless I can, my rule of thumb is until you have eliminated every other possibility, you got no business going on a reach like that and saying, well, yeah, they were there, and then they weren't there, so they must have shifted into another dimension, or with all due respect to your caller, I'm not there yet. I'm working on a number of theories right now to deal with what I call the woo, because I've heard it too many times from too many people. Very similar circumstances, very similar encounter experiences, to where what I'm starting to do now is kind of getting outside of my comfort zone and trying to find a rationale, a scientific-based rationale for what they've seen, what they've experienced, and to try to bring it back in, if you will, to something that's biological. For instance, when people talk about them seeming to come out of nowhere and then disappear, my first thought, especially being from my military background, is camouflage. Well, I know with camouflage, and I've gone from BDUs to I've been through like 3 different variations of camouflage, but what I'm looking at is, and these are based on a couple of photographs that were sent to me that were done under a microscope of hair samples, and in one of those, I noticed something really peculiar I've never seen in any of the hair samples I've seen, and I've seen plenty. But here's a clump of hair, if you can imagine, a clump of hair under a microscope, and it's backlit, of course, with white light from behind, and through a glass slide. And so what's interesting is that almost 30% of these hairs in this particular sample I was sent were translucent.
Oh.
And I'm like, started thinking, okay, well, translucent hair, what sort of visual properties would that give it? Would it not, like fiber optics, absorb the light and color of whatever's surrounding this animal? I mean, we look at dogs, I mean, like German Shepherds, they have a base coat, and then they've got guard hairs that they call guard hairs during the winter. And so what if they have a unique property in their coat? And if you'll excuse me, I'll kind of give you an example. So what I've done is I've gone out and I bought literally 1,000 feet of fiber optic wire. And what I intend to do to just kind of follow up on my theory is to find some, even if it's a synthetic piece of fur or real hide or whatnot, I want to start threading pieces of this fiber optics through the backside and to where it comes out about the same length as the other fur, if you will. And then before that, of course, I want to do before and after pictures, putting it in different settings and different lighting in the woods, but see if these clear hair follicles may have the ability to just absorb the surrounding colors and light to the point where, as long as they're not moving, it would be, I think, one of the ultimate camouflage alternatives. So I'm gonna experiment with that. You know, I want to give all these outliers an excuse to go. You know what? That's probably what we saw. You know,
just to jump in there, just to jump in, the SAS in the UK, they actually use fiber optic like hairs strands for camouflaging snow.
Are you kidding me?
No, it's documented in there's a oh god, I can't remember his name now. There's a guy that's written books about the SAS since about 1960.
It makes sense.
And they've been even before fiber optics have been, you know, fiber optics haven't been around for that long, but they've used like a variation for it, and they use it for camouflage in snow because it's not just it doesn't create, you know, that reflective material that just
not reflective but absorbent.
Yeah, it absorbs it, and it also creates like that sheen effect where you can't see anything. The only thing
you can
see is the eyes and stuff like that. They've been using that now for probably about 40 years.
Okay, well, maybe I'm on the right track, but I just might be a little behind the times. But if you find a link for that, please send it to me.
Yeah, no, I think his name's Andy McDowell. He's wrote loads of books about the SAS and stuff like that. And
Andy McDowell?
Andy McDowell, I think his name is.
All right, I'm writing that down. So as an example, just one that we know in nature, I think if you ask your audience, let's take polar bears, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So a polar bear, if you ask anybody, you know, what color is a polar bear? Well, they're white. Okay. And I'm not recommending this, but if you did shave a polar bear, preferably not alive, you'll find out that their actual skin color is black.
Yeah.
It's the hair, it's the fur, if you will, that the polar bear have in their hide that basically reflects or absorbs, and or both, who knows. But a polar bear, and sometimes you can actually see it, because if you watch, sometimes if they flex one way or the other, you can see black skin underneath. But you know, so it's kind of the same concept. But no, so that's kind of things I'm working on. I'm trying to like explain, trying to you know, giving out for what some people are, you know, I think taking a little too far.
Let me ask you a question, Todd. Do you think that the ability to camouflage, do you think that would be an evolutionary thing that they would have developed over time simply because of the fact of having to now, you know, disappear or being, I guess, kind of pushed, you know, into having to go into a hiding? Or do you think that would be something that possibly was, you know, from the beginning?
Well, I think just looking at animals in general, camouflage has always been both useful in terms of on the defensive. You know, we look at chameleons, we look at so many animals, even certain forms of butterflies and moths, they just look like leaves or whatever. It's a protective thing. But I think on the other side, camouflage like that is an advantage on the offense, if you will. That it allows predators. It allows predators to get in position to be in a much better position to take down you know, different prey. So and then, but in the case of this particular species, it may be both. You know, it may be that it shields them from those they don't want to deal with, which is pretty much is us. and at the same time, it probably gives them a very offensive capability in terms of being able to maybe situate alongside game trails and without necessarily what am I thinking of?
Like an external cover on them. kind of thing.
Exactly. You know, a game blind, if you will.
Right.
You know, so I mean, it could be helpful in both ways, but we see camouflage, you know, octopus, you know, we see that all throughout nature for going back eons. So I don't think it necessarily is specific to their interaction with humans, but it certainly doesn't hurt.
So, going back to the Native Americans and the research you've done in regard to that, is there any difference in their interpretation of Bigfoot in relation to what us white people perceive as Bigfoot, or you know, that kind of thing? So,
what's the question again?
Yeah, going back to the your research in regard to the Native Americans, is there any difference between their interpretation of what Bigfoot is in relation to what us white people think?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I have a great appreciation for their particular take on the subject, because they don't consider them. I mean, let's be honest. Most Native Americans come from, and I would say it goes back even further. Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, Australopithecus, whatever, but they have a tendency to view themselves somewhat as animists, if you will. In other words, they don't see their position in nature any different than any other animal per se. They're just part of a blended culture of life, and when it comes to this species, they have a great deal of respect for them, and certainly not the case, I would say, with us modern day Westerners. We look at it like, oh my God, there's another trophy. I don't know. For those that actually are willing to step up and believe, and just kind of circling back, if I can, this is why our conservancy, the American Primate Conservancy, is so bent on preservation. There's a lot of people that you could talk to that said, "Oh, the best thing you do is just leave them alone. Leave them alone. They're going to be fine." And then if anybody's done any research into extinction, it's a pretty pathetic picture. We literally have black and white photographs, even tin plate photographs of species of animal that actually existed, that we knew existed, that are gone. And why? Not so much. I mean, people say, yeah, people wanted to go out and shoot everything out there. I don't, you know, that might be to some degree the truth, but I mean, it was out of sheer ignorance. We didn't have the technology and the resources to literally study each of these species and find out what the health of that species is, or was, I should say. And we've literally watched species after species, I mean, in the hundreds now, in the hundreds.
Right.
We have evidence they existed, and they are gone, and they will never come back. And I get it, you know, the whole, you know, natural science, animals do, some animals become extinct while others somehow adapt and go on. But, you know, it's just, I could not live with myself if, seeing what I've seen, if I could not ensure, I mean, if I have the ability to, and I don't know that I do, but I will do everything in my ability to find out one way or the other, you know, how many are there today? Nobody can tell you. They can guess. Okay, how many were there 100 years ago? How many were there 1,000 years ago? And how many will there be 1,000 years from now? Nobody can give you those answers, because we don't we're not actively monitoring this species. And so I'd rather err on the side of caution. I want to know that my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, at the very least, will have every bit as much a chance to experience what I did. And I would not be able to sleep at night or not knowing that I might have been able to do something and I didn't.
Is there with your conservation, can people donate? Is there a website that they can check it out?
Yeah, we have a website. It's constantly under construction, but it's American Primate, one word, AmericanPrimate.org.
Let me just type a little bit faster.
Yeah, it's in badly in need of updating, and I plan to get on that.
American Primate, sorry.
AmericanPrimate.org.
Awesome.
Yeah, but it's way outdated, so I really need to get in there and get on that. But yeah, and if anybody wants to just email me directly, I'm open for any sort of questions or any way I can help anybody. My email is AMericanPrimate@AOL.com. I'm like the last two people still using that, but yeah, AmericanPrimate@AOL.com, and feel free to write, and I'll do my best to help in any way I can.
We've got about another 4 minutes, but
I know Lynda has something to add too.
Yeah, okay. Just something little, hopefully. My question is, I mean, there's a difference between a sighting of one of these creatures, we'll call them creatures, and interaction. And I'm sure that you've heard a lot of stories and you've been privy to a lot of information about such things. What kinds of interaction do you see between, us people and the Sasquatch that is very interesting? That
is a phenomenal question, Lynda, because people say, how many encounters have you had? Well, that's kind of a loaded question because encounters come in different forms. I mean, the ultimate encounter is a, visual, sighting of one of these or more of these this species. But encounters come in other ways. For instance, vocalizations,
right?
Of which I've had many. I'd love to. We need to do this again because I'd love to go over this. What I went through back in October was really a game changer for me up on the Omaha Indian Reservation. Things I'm still trying to wrap my head around. But to simply say an encounter has to be visual is not true. There's vocalizations. There's, of course, track finds, physical encounters, if you will. I have had tree knocks on a couple of occasions, which are not. They're very unusual. They're not some large animal stepping on a tree and breaking it or something. I mean, these are very intentional knocks. And most recently, and we'll probably have to pick up on this later, but eye shine. I have heard for decades about people having encounters with these things in pitch black dark, emitting what amounts to light coming from their eyes. And I don't mean projected light by any means, but I don't mean reflected light either. I've got a list of like 40 some animals and what their retinas, what different colors their retinas reflect when light's put on them. I'm talking in the middle of no lights, total absence of lights. I was introduced, and this happened 5 nights in a row on the reservation at 2 different locations. My friend would speak in his native tongue. He would say, "Aho, kage," which means hello, friend. And he'd say, "Gigaho," which means come closer. And I swear to God, within 10 to 20 seconds, blink, there's a set of eyes. A set of eyes just blink. I mean, just come on. And then off to the right, another set of eyes, you know. And at times we've had up to 3 of them. And they're not fireflies. These eyes are very parallel. They stay at the same distance, but they sometimes came closer, sometimes backed off, sometimes moved to the left and to the right. But it was the vocalizations that really sold me on this being Bigfoot. I still don't understand that. And I'm going to do the same thing like I'm doing with this stuff. I will find a scientific answer for what I considered was woo-woo or whatever. I'm going to find the right answer. But for a large mammal to be able to put off bioluminescence is unheard of. But I'm getting there. I'm getting closer, and I will find the answer. But yeah, so
it's fascinating. It's fascinating to think, you know, and especially with these new things that because we've heard that about the eyes. We heard that actually last week on our show. Somebody had said something about the eyes, and you know, when you're hearing these. I mean, for me, that's a new development. I mean, like that's something I never heard of, you know, on other shows or anything to do with Sasquatch before. So it's interesting. It's fascinating to hear this.
It's mind-boggling. Yeah. I spent five nights from like midnight till 2 o'clock in the morning, again at 2 different locations, and I witnessed this. Yeah. And I came home still scratching my head. And I will get to the bottom of it, I assure you. Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating.
I want to hear all of it. I need to have you on again. We need to have him on again.
Like very soon.
I would love to. Well, I got to get out. I got to get back out to the field, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I've got some people waiting for me, and I think things are it's getting about to be twilight here, and that's when things start really kicking up. So, but thank you so much for having me, and I've enjoyed it immensely, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
It was such a pleasure to meet you, Todd. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Absolutely. Todd. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
That was easy.
Yeah, there you go. See? Thanks, guys.
And thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. Thank you so much.
All right. You have a good night. Bye
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.